That'll lose the filming angle, right?
Join me on the M1 motorway, which is not really the place that this car would normally be found. I am today in a 2003 Skoda Fabia 1.2 60 brake horsepower classic model. Classic meaning bare. So I've had this car for actually 2.5 months, which means I've managed to do about 2,500 miles in it, believe it or not, to give it a proper little road test. So, first question, of course, Martin, why are you in a Skoda Fabia? Well, the easy answer for that is actually to watch this video here, for the part 1 of the Alfa Romeo Garage 21 video, because you'll see us picking it up there. This is the courtesy car that Garage 21 put out on long-term loan for anybody whose car is with them. Interestingly, when we were up there, and it did make me feel a little bit gutted actually that we weren't a day later, this car had just come back and I took it out. While we were there, they were prepping a 1993 Renault Laguna 1.8 LT to go out as a second courtesy car. Now, where else could you get a 29-year-old car as a courtesy car? That would have been really good fun. However, I don't know whether I'd have broken that one. The Skoda itself, as an overall summary, I think is quite easy to summarise. I think for its time, it is a fantastic little go-kart, but it is not a car that's suitable for these kind of roads that we're on today. It's only because we're going to collect the Alfa. Bit of background about the Fabia, because obviously this was at a time when the VW Group really got its hands on the Skoda brand. So some of you may remember a car called the Felicia. The Skoda Felicia was released in 1996 and really only hung around for about 3 to 4 years. That car was a bit of a mishmash of Volkswagen parts and Skoda parts. So you'll recognise interior functions from a VW Polo, particularly the steering wheel was the main giveaway, with its logo in the bottom left corner of the wheel. But even then, a lot of the switchgear was Skoda, and the original engine was as well. They used to have a 1.3 petrol unit in that. So the Fabia was the first time where actually Volkswagen really could sort of help Skoda in making a value city car that sat below the Polo and alongside the Seat Ibiza, and to an extent the Arosa as well at that age. Bearing in mind that this car came out in 1999-2000 on a W reg, it's really solidly built for a small little car. Now, don't get me wrong, it's plastic and there's a lot of grey. There is a lot of grey. But everything is really substantial and actually feels really well built, even after essentially 20 years. Now, we've got to take into mind, of course, this is a sort of late Mark I model Fabia, so some bits may have changed, and on this one in particular, they have changed the stereo to an aftermarket one. The original double DIN unit would have been very basic and probably had a tape player as well. But overall, when you compare this to the cars at the time, which would have been a Corsa, I guess a Corsa C and a Ford Fiesta, which at the time had just been facelifted in 2001, 2002, to have that awful, one of the worst stereo systems that centre console builds ever made, then actually it was pretty good for its time. The engine itself, the engine is a Volkswagen unit, Volkswagen derived unit, 3-cylinder unit. It sounds like a 3-cylinder unit, it pulls like a 3-cylinder unit. It is quite torquey. It's not going to set the world alight, but actually will sit at 70 miles an hour on the motorway with very little issue at all. I have no complaints about the engine. However, it must be said, like I say, I've been driving this car for 2,500 miles, and I have averaged, according to this, 45.5 miles to the gallon. So really not bad at all. I have put E5 in it today, so I don't know whether that's going to make much of a difference. Quirks and features about the car itself. It doesn't really have any. This was a classic model, so none of the buttons are actually buttons. So the centre dash console has a rear windscreen demist, you've got air conditioning at the bottom there, and that is the end of the car. It really is a really basic car. There are some quirks that I've had whilst driving this one, which is on 103,000 miles. There's a lovely light, an orange light that they put in the dashboard here to show you that the engine is on. So it's a nice little orange picture of an engine to tell you that the engine is running. That's on when the engine's on, so that's just to tell you that, yeah, the engine is definitely there even if you can't hear it. So that's nice. One little quirk I have had when driving this car is that actually the interior sounder has just given up. So when I had the car initially, the thing I kept doing was forgetting to turn the headlights off because I'm not used to the switch there, and of course your beeper would go to tell you that it's on. That's given up. As it turns out as well, has the indicators, so there is no noise coming from those anymore, but that's probably a quirk specific to this car. My stance really is that for a car of 20 years, this has held up really well as a little city car, and I can't really complain about it. It's made me understand why people perhaps buy these if they're never going to go on motorways and just take it round town. The gear change is fantastic, so the actual gearbox and the throw in the box is fantastic. It holds the road really well for a big car, and coming from a background where I used to sell Vauxhalls, I'm used to Corsa Cs, and compared to this, they were very nasty, actually, probably be the right word for it. So my view overall is that actually this is the perfect car for somebody who just needs an car in town. If you're thinking about getting a car for perhaps a new driver, then there's no reason not to look at a Mark 1 Fabia for me. Bearing in mind they went all the way up to 2007, so you can pick up a late model Fabia for less than 4 figures these days, and it will do you well. You'll see some exterior shots of the car. Just ignore the bits of rust. Just be aware of rust on these cars. But otherwise, it's standard VW fare. All the mechanics, all the electrics, all the consumables are interchangeable with the whole Volkswagen Group range of products. So you're never going to be short on supplies. So, interestingly, Skoda carried on a theme with this car from the Felicia, which is that there was an estate version of the car built.
Interesting.
Now, at that time, small estates weren't really a thing. Obviously, you know, these days you do get your, say, Ibiza Touras, you've got a Renault Clio Tourer that you could buy back in the day. They've all been discontinued as well now, in fairness, alongside, I think, the Fabia Tourer now anyway. But when the range was released, you could buy a Skoda Fabia hatchback, which is this one here. So we've got a 5-door model here. There was no 3-door Fabia model, as far as I can remember. Someone's going to prove me wrong now. You can have it as a 5-door estate, as pictured there, which was essentially just adding a bit more boot space. It was very popular with elderly dog walkers. Not my view, the view of the customer. And you could buy it as a saloon, which was very rare for the UK market, although they did sell it. Much more popular out in mainland Europe, as saloons always have been. So it really was a sort of a mix of everything. Now, part of the reason for that was, obviously, at the time, Skoda was going through a bit of a reputational change. When Skoda wasn't part of the VW group, the chances are that the person you met driving a Skoda could well have been your nan. They did really have quite an older market share, and that's just a fact, unfortunately. But as they brought this model out, it meant that they had to retain some cars that they felt would be affordable to them, but also it opened up this whole new avenue of young families. So you ended up seeing a lot of Skoda Fabia estates being bought by young families who needed that space for the boot as well, alongside the dog walkers. Boot space in the hatchback is absolutely fine, actually, and even in this basic model, it came with split 60/40 rear folding seats. Must be said, if you're sitting in the front and like I am here at this sort of height, 6'1", they fold to about 40 degrees and then they hit the front chairs. But they do split in half. So give it credit where it's due. It's not a flat floor for obvious reasons, but it's a nice deep boot. that's all for this episode. I hope I've given you a nice little summary there. Be interested to hear your comments. But if you want to see a bit more about Garage 21 and a little bit more about the Alfa that we're going up to collect, follow the links that are going to be all around here, and we will see you next time. Bye!
Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching.